Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. We are here this afternoon to proceed in the hearing in docket number 2023-3-E. This docket concerns the annual review of base rates for fuel cost of Duke Energy Carolinas, LLC. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. With us virtually, we have Commissioner Urban, present in the hearing room. We have Commissioner Justin Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Carolee Williams, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. Parties, who wants to speak first? ORS, Mr. Torrey.
Madam Chair, I trust the Commission had an opportunity to review the stipulation.
Well, we had a little fire drill about the time y'all were sending it, so we've had a little bit of time, but not what we anticipated.
Well, given that, I'd be happy to introduce the stipulation and at least provide a high-level summary if the Commission would like.
All right, so you're offering the stipulation into evidence at this time?
Yes, Madam Chair. Let's go ahead and please and mark the proposed or the stipulation for identification and move it into the record as the first hearing exhibit.
Any objection? Hearing none. The stipulation will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 1 and received into the record of this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners again. As I mentioned this morning, yesterday afternoon, ORS and the company were able to reach a settlement in principle that would resolve all the pending issues in the case before you. That agreement has now been committed to writing in the form of the stipulation that was filed earlier this afternoon. Again, the terms of the stipulation would resolve all the issues that the Commission is tasked with determining annually in accordance with the provisions of South Carolina Code Annotated 58-27-865, as well as some evidentiary issues related to a pending motion in limine. ORS witnesses with respect to base fuel recommended that the company be precluded from recovering replacement fuel costs it incurred as a result of the forced outage of Blues Creek Unit 2 from August 31st, 2022 to October 29th, 2022 in the amount of $1,736,989. ORS witnesses also recommended that the company be precluded from recovering replacement fuel costs it incurred as a result of Allen Units 1 and 5 being in extended planned reserve status from December 23rd, 2022 to December 26th, 2022 in the amount of $1,696,491. Cumulatively, the proposed disallowance in base fuel was $3,433,480. And as should be evident from the filings in this matter, ORS and the company initially had and still do have considerable differences of opinion regarding the proposed disallowances. ORS and the company engaged in considerable negotiation and discussion regarding the proposed disallowances and worked very hard to reach a settlement. ORS and the company were able to agree on a disallowance of $2,566,491. That compromise disallowance is comprised of the full recommended disallowance for Allen Units 1 and 5 of $1,696,491, plus half of the proposed disallowance for the Blues Creek outage. rounded up, which is actually $868,494 rounded up to $870,000. Additionally, the stipulation addresses the company's recovery of costs related to its Distributed Energy Resource Program, or DERP, the company's environmental costs, and the company's capacity-related costs. Now, while neither party came away with everything that it wanted, I can assure you the company and ORS believe that the terms of the stipulation, as any good stipulation, reflect a significant amount of give and take on the part of both parties. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any additional questions, and I know ORS and the company intend to put up witnesses to further explain this settlement. Thank you.
Thank you for the overview, Mr. Torrey. Would you make sure that the court reporter has a copy of the stipulation? Oh, she says she has it. Thank you. Duke, do you wish to add anything?
Briefly, Madam Chair.
I'm not sure if that's on.
There we go.
Thank
Briefly, Madam Chair, thank you. And we appreciate ORS's explanation and of the stipulation. Just wanted to offer a few additional comments. At the outset, we'd note that the Supreme Court of South Carolina has recognized that litigants are free to devise a settlement agreement in any manner that does not contravene public policy or the law. And the court encourages such compromise agreements because they avoid costly litigation and delay. The General Assembly, for its part, has expressed in subsection 58.450, subsection A9 of the South Carolina Code, that it is the duty and the responsibility of ORS to serve as a facilitator or otherwise act directly or indirectly to resolve disputes and issues involving matters within the jurisdiction of the Commission. Notably, that provision remained in the Code even after the public interest test was revised in 2018. As Mr. Torrey noted, this was a hotly contested case that was litigated thoroughly by the parties. We trust the Commission is aware through the various rounds of testimony and motions practice that was certainly the case, and there were significant legal issues before it. But the parties worked equally as hard over the last week to put aside their differences and try to come up with a settlement that was reasonable. Not everyone got exactly what they wanted, but that is the hallmark of a good compromise. Again, the company appreciates the parties working together on this matter to achieve this resolution. We respectfully submit that the stipulation is reasonable, prudent, consistent with the law and public policy of South Carolina, and in the public interest. And we would ask that the Commission approve it at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trawick. Interveners, I know you haven't had a long time to look at this, but do you have any preliminary comments? You don't have to respond.
No, I would mention that I do not have authority, and I think just under the circumstances, it will be impossible for me to get authority. So we'll proceed. I would draw your attention, Madam Chair, to an email that the parties received from Kate Mixon a moment ago, and I don't know that Mr. Stark is on it, wherein she informs that SACE and CCL are comfortable signing on to the stipulation, and I might, just as a courtesy, suggest you inquire of her. I assume she's
I was
online.
getting ready to. You just happened to be present.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Ms. Mixon, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thanks, Chair Balser. As Mr. Elliott just noted, SACE and CCL just shared with the other parties that we would like to sign on to the stipulation. Obviously, we have not executed that yet, but intend to do so, I presume, this afternoon. And appreciate the hard work of all of the parties to reach agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Mixon. Are there any other preliminary matters before we start with witness testimony? Hearing none, Ms. Brown or Mr. Trawick, want to call your first witnesses?
This sounds like this is on.
May I seek some clarification?
Of course.
The witnesses that are being presented this afternoon, I think, are mainly not contested issues. Is that correct?
That's correct,
So-
Chair Belzer.
So these witnesses would not be able to address the stipulation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Belzer, members of the commission. The company would first call Mr. Stephen Capps and Mr. Matthew Cameron to testify.
Gentlemen, when you get settled, the court reporter will swear you in.
Can you raise your right hand for me, please? In the testimony you're about to give, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Mr. Capps, would you please state your name for the record?
Stephen Capps.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm Senior Vice President of Nuclear Operations for Duke Energy Corporation.
How long have you worked in the nuclear industry?
Over 36 years.
Can you tell me a little bit about your educational background?
I have a degree in mechanical engineering and have completed the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations Senior Nuclear Plant Management course.
Please describe any prior roles you have held that are relevant to this proceeding.
I've served in various roles in nuclear, including engineer, senior reactor operator, shift technical advisor, plant manager, and vice president of McGuire Nuclear Station. And then prior to assuming my current position, I served as a senior vice president of nuclear corporate for Duke Energy, where I had direct accountability for the nuclear corporate functions, including corporate engineering, major projects, corporate governance, and operational support and organizational effectiveness.
Please describe your current responsibilities at the company.
As Senior Vice President of Nuclear Operations, I'm responsible for providing executive oversight for the safe and reliable operation of Duke's 3 South Carolina operating nuclear stations. Those stations are Catawba Nuclear Station, Oconee Nuclear Station, and Robinson Nuclear Plant. And then I'm also involved in the operations of our North Carolina plants, including DEC's McGuire Nuclear Station.
Thank you, Mr. Capps. Chair Belzer, based upon Mr. Capps' extensive experience in matters related to nuclear plant operations, I propose to tender this witness as an expert in the field of nuclear plant operations.
Are there any questions of voir dire for the witness regarding his qualifications? Hearing none, Mr. Capps will be recognized as an expert in nuclear plant operations.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Capps, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 12 pages of direct testimony that were pre-filed with the commission in this proceeding?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
If I asked you the same questions that were asked in your pre-filed direct testimony this afternoon, would your answers be the same?
Yes, ma'am, they would.
Chair Belzer, I would ask that Mr. Capps' pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Capps' pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if testified to from the stand.
Thank you. Mr. Capps, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 2 publicly filed exhibits that were attached to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any changes to those exhibits at this time?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Chair Belzer, I would ask that Mr. Capps' 2 publicly filed exhibits be entered, I guess, as the second composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Capps' 2 public exhibits, which I believe are Capps Exhibit 1 and Capps Exhibit 2, will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. Mr. Capps, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 1 confidentially filed exhibit that was attached to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any changes to that exhibit at this time?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Chair Belzer, I would ask that Mr. Capps' confidentially filed exhibit be entered as the next hearing exhibit and that it remain under seal. Confidential treatment was granted by order number 2023-5 597.
Mr. Capps' exhibit, which I think is Capps Exhibit 3, and has been afforded confidential treatment by prior commission order, will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 3, received into the evidence of this case, and will be maintained under confidential designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Capps, would you please provide a summary of your testimony at this time?
Yes, ma'am. The purpose of my testimony is to describe and discuss the performance of DEC's nuclear fleet for the period of June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2023. DEC's primary objective is to safely provide reliable and cost-effective electricity to its customers. Safe and efficient operation of our nuclear facilities supports fulfillment of this objective. DEC operated its nuclear stations in a reasonable and prudent manner during the review period and achieved an actual net nuclear capacity factor of 94.42% while providing approximately 61% of the total power generated by DEC. For 23 consecutive years, DEC's nuclear units have exceeded a 90% capacity factor. There were 4 refueling outages completed during the review period: fall 2022 outages at Catawba Unit 2 and Oconee Unit 1, followed by spring 2023 outages at McGuire Unit 2 and Catawba Unit 1. 3 of the 4 refueling outages were scheduled for longer than normal durations due to the reactor vessel closure head work taking place during the Catawba and McGuire refueling outages. The fall 2022 Catawba Unit 2 refueling outage was extended by 4.3 days due to delays with the reactor vessel closure head peening project and an emergent challenge with the 2 Bravo feed water pump. The fall 2022 Oconee Unit 1 outage began after the unit completed a continuous run of over 709 days and was completed 1.2 days under the scheduled allocation. The spring 2023 refueling outage at McGuire Unit 2 extended 1.3 days beyond the scheduled allocation due to emergent challenges with valves in the safety injection and feed water systems. The spring 2023 Catawba Unit 1 refueling outage was completed 2.9 days under the scheduled allocation. As I stated previously, the company achieved an actual net nuclear capacity factor of 94.42% while executing 4 refueling outages during the review period. DEC's performance results support its continued commitment to achieving high performance without compromising safety and reliability. This concludes my testimony summary.
Thank you, Mr. Capps. Good afternoon, Mr. Cameron. Would you please state your name for the record?
Matthew Cameron.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am the manager of nuclear fuel supply for Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolinas.
How long have you worked in the nuclear industry?
Approximately 17 years.
What is your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in nuclear engineering from Purdue University and a master's degree in business administration from Wake Forest University. I'm also a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina.
Mr. Cameron, you might want to scoot that microphone a little bit closer to you. I don't know if the commission is having trouble hearing you, but I am, so.
Okay, is that better?
It sounds better to me. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Please describe any prior roles you've held that are relevant to your testimony in this proceeding.
I began my career with the company as an engineer in Duke Energy Corporation's Safety Analysis Group in 2006, where I performed plant response and accident analysis. I became a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina in 2011. In 2012, I assumed the lead for purchasing uranium and conversion services.
Please describe your responsibilities at the company.
I am directly responsible for purchasing uranium conversion services, enrichment services, and fuel fabrication.
Chair Belzer, at this time, based upon Mr. Cameron's extensive experience in matters related to nuclear fuel and nuclear fuel procurement, I propose to tender Mr. Cameron as an expert in the field of nuclear fuel procurement.
Any questions of voir dire from the parties regarding the witness's qualifications as an expert? Hearing none, we will accept Mr. Cameron as an expert in nuclear fuel procurement.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Cameron, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 8 pages of direct testimony that were pre-filed with the commission in this proceeding?
I did.
If I asked you the same questions that were asked in your pre-filed direct testimony this afternoon, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belzer, I would ask that Mr. Cameron's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Cameron's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Cameron, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 2 exhibits that were attached to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any changes to those exhibits at this time?
No, I do not.
Chair Belzer, I would ask that Mr. Cameron's pre-filed exhibits be entered as the next composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Cameron's pre-filed exhibits, I think marked Cameron Exhibit 1 and Cameron Exhibit 2 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 4 and received into the record of this case.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron, would you please provide a summary of your testimony at this time?
Yes. The purpose of my direct testimony is to provide information regarding DEC's nuclear fuel purchasing practices, provide costs for the June 1, 2022 through May 31, 2023 review period, and describe changes forthcoming for the November 1, 2023 through October 31, 2024 billing period. DEC's nuclear fuel procurement practices involve computing near and long-term consumption forecasts, establishing nuclear system inventory levels, projecting required annual fuel purchases, requesting proposals from qualified suppliers, negotiating a portfolio of long-term contracts from diverse sources of supply, and monitoring deliveries against contract commitments. Consistent with industry practices, long-term contracts are used extensively to cover the largest portion of DEC's forward requirements. By staggering these long-term contracts, DEC reduces exposure to possible price volatility and supply disruptions from any single source of supply. DEC's portfolio of diversified contract pricing yielded an average unit cost of $40.68 per pound on a delivery basis for uranium concentrates during the review period, representing an increase of 20% per pound from the prior review period. The average unit cost of DEC's purchases of enrichment services during the review period decreased 21% from the prior review period to $79.30 per separative work unit. The delivered costs for fabrication and conversion services have a limited impact on the overall fuel expense rate, given that the dollar amounts for these purchases represent a substantially smaller percentage of DEC's total direct fuel cost relative to uranium concentrates or enrichment. Recently, prices for certain components of nuclear fuel in the market have increased for a variety of reasons, including production cutbacks and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. However, because fuel is typically expensed over 2 to 3 operating cycles, roughly 3 to 6 years, DEC's nuclear fuel expense in the upcoming billing period will be determined by the cost of fuel assemblies loaded into the reactors during the review period, as well as prior periods. This means that the fuel residing in the reactors during the billing period will have been obtained under historical contracts negotiated in various market conditions. As a result, the company anticipates the average fuel expense to remain the same from 0.559 cents per kilowatt hour incurred in the review period to approximately 0.559 cents per kilowatt hour in the billing period. Although costs of certain components of nuclear fuel are expected to increase in future years, nuclear fuel costs on a cents per kilowatt hour basis will likely continue to be a fraction of the cost of fossil fuel. Therefore, customers will continue to benefit from DEC's diverse generation mix and the strong performance of its nuclear fleet through lower fuel costs than would otherwise result absent the significant contribution of nuclear generation to meeting customers' demands. This concludes my testimony summary.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Chair Belzer, at this time, Mr. Capps and Mr. Cameron are available for cross-examination from the other parties and questioning from commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Elliott?
No questions.
I take it with the stipulation, Ms. Mixon and Mr. Torrey, that your parties are forgoing cross-examination of the witnesses?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Ms. Mixon, is that correct?
This is Ms. Clancy, but yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Ms. Clancy. Commissioners, questions for this panel?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to just start off by kind of laying some groundwork, which helps me think things through. And this is not directed just at you two, but just kind of where we're going from here. And so I'd like to just start out by reading the law. This is section 58-27-865F. Says the commission shall disallow recovery of any fuel costs that it finds without just cause to be the result of failure of the utility to make every reasonable effort to minimize fuel costs or any decision of the utility resulting in unreasonable fuel costs. And it goes on from there. But to me, that's kind of the basic jumping off point. It doesn't leave, in my mind, much guessing in terms of can you make some mistakes. It says every reasonable effort or any decision. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And secondly, I'd like to go through a report that the company's filed back in June the 11th of 2021. And this was related to docket number 2021-66A. And in part, this relates to the assessment of systems' ability to withstand ice storms and other winter conditions. So I was looking through this document, and on page 9, it talks about weather hardening efforts that have allowed the companies to successfully supply reliable power to South Carolina through the 2014 and 2015 polar vortexes, and lessons learned from the winter events. In particular, this is referred to in here as a Texas blackout. And then you go back to page 34, it talks about the company's load reduction plan. It says it's updated annually and would be used during a system emergency when reduction of load is required to stabilize the electric grid. And then back to page 39. It says rigorous asset inspection and maintenance programs are employed to ensure systems and infrastructure are prepared to withstand extreme weather. And finally, page 86 says the North Carolina Utility Commission requires all black start units to be started annually to verify unit operability. So with that, I would like to start asking some questions. And my first one would be related to the black start that are required to be started annually that the North Carolina Commission requires. Are you two aware of, no, that's not your specialty, but are you aware if that happens with South Carolina?
No, sir, I am not. I mean, in our case, nuclear units are not black start units.
Right. Okay. All right. And I think you talked about reliability and in particular nuclear reliability when you're talking about your background. So who is the person that is at the company overall responsible for reliability, not nuclear, but overall?
I mean, if I look at the generation side of the business, the nuclear generation and then the non-nuclear, we call it RE, but reports to to a chief generation officer that's a gentleman named Preston Gillespie.
And what was that name again?
His name is Preston Gillespie.
Okay.
So he's responsible for all of generation.
All right. And he's not, I don't believe he's testifying in this case, is he?
No, sir, he is not.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask a couple of questions here about nuclear and nuclear fuel, and I think my questions are kind of maybe appropriate for either one of you to answer, so I'm not going to specifically ask, let you two just kind of figure out who gets to go.
Yes, sir.
Been seeing and hearing a lot about uranium production cutbacks, and you mentioned that, I believe, Mr. Cameron, on page 6 of your direct testimony. And so my first question along those lines is, do those places supply your company with uranium?
Commissioner Thomas, that uranium itself is a fungible commodity. So as a whole, the industry is receiving material from those mines. As of now, with the recent price increases, all of the mine cutbacks have reversed and are restarting or ramping back up to full production.
So you're seeing an increase in uranium production, not a decline? Is that what
Yes,
I'm
sir.
hearing? Okay. All right.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Caston?
I wanted to make sure I caught that because
I'm
you're still
sorry.
a little low. Was that domestic or was that just?
Well, I'm asking generally worldwide. So thanks for the clarification there, Commissioner Caston. Yeah, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about worldwide here.
Understood, and it's the same for domestic and international. They're both sides have mines restarting today or ramping back up to full production.
Okay. All right. And in terms of the company's purchases, do you take into account or have any concerns or consideration as to where the mining occurs and whether it's in locations that may be friendly or unfriendly, or is any of that factor into the decisions?
Yes, sir, Commissioner. We do keep an eye on where the material's coming from, both from the mine itself and geographically, to make sure that we have a diverse source of supply.
Okay. And what about the processing of the raw material? What's going on there? Because I've been, again, hearing more and more about less processing and harder to come by.
The U.S. Conversion facility has restarted as of late June or early July. So there are 3 what I'll call Western conversion facilities, one in Canada, one in the U.S., and one in France, that are all operating today. From an enrichment perspective, the U.S. enrichment facility has actually announced a 15% capacity increase, I believe by 2026, and the enrichment facility in France has said they are planning to increase capacity as well. On a supply-demand perspective, it is difficult to find. It's becoming more harder to find material as the European and U.S. utilities kind of pivot towards more geopolitically safe sources. But it is still possible to find material today.
Okay. And so what's going on with Russia and the refined fuel that in the past a lot's come from there, is my understanding?
Yes, there is I guess it's U.S. law that 20% of our needs can come from Russia. As of today, there are no restrictions on whether it can be imported, so it is still being imported into the U.S., the same as in Europe. It is still legal for use in Europe as well.
Okay. And Russia has not on their side, cut shipments to the U.S.?
No, sir. As of now, all deliveries are still coming on onto the shore.
Okay. And has the company ever had issues in receiving the contracted nuclear fuel?
To my knowledge, the company has not had any issues receiving fuel as we requested.
Okay. So what's going on with regards to personnel that are qualified to refuel, maintain, or actually operate the nuclear fleet? A lot of people are retiring, I guess, is the basis for that, jumping off from that question. What's going on with the ability to keep up with the needed skills and talent there?
Yes, sir. There are retirements. If you just think about even our own fleet, we got plants that have been operating about 50 years. So anybody that spent their career, even prior to now, and certainly still ongoing now, we have retirements, and we offset that by new hires, and we're still able to hire both in the craft operator, technical professionals in the market. We're able to bring folks in, and then we rely on a knowledge transfer process to get those folks up to speed to be able to pick up the responsibilities as folks retire out of the organization.
Okay. And are you making an effort to, from time to time, bring retirees back if they want to? Is there anything going on where such people, with the skills might come back and help, during certain periods?
Yes, sir. It happens, particularly, say, for a refueling outage. We'll contract a lot of support for the outage, and we have folks that continue to come back and help us with that work, and it's very beneficial to us to have those folks in the mix in the organization.
Okay. And when you say you contract for, is that people that would not only work for Duke but other utilities as well, the contract employees?
Yes, sir, it is. I mean, it's folks that would generally work in the industry and kind of move outage to outage.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. I believe that's all I had at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners' questions? Commissioner Caston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Commissioner Thomas actually touched on some of the things I had an interest in. I appreciate that. And I was thinking relative to nuclear generation, nuclear design, and I don't remember the time frame, 30, 40 years ago, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island. There seemed to be, I don't know if I'd say a rush, but a movement to kind of end nuclear, as I recall, some states, governments and such. And I was curious, have we lost a generation of designers and contractors, constructors, or has something still been going on? Have we still been training and teaching folks how to design nuclear facilities? I know there's talk about small nuclear reactors. What's going on there?
I think on the operational side, it's kind of been an ongoing process of folks retiring out of the industry and us bringing new folks in. So there's certainly been continuity there. And then, on the vendor side or the supplier side, I mean, certainly, as you said, generationally, the big builds were done in the 70s and the 80s. There have been things since then for different utilities to either build plants or finish plants that have created a knowledge base. But certainly the folks from the 70s and 80s, they're when you go interact with the vendors, there are a few folks like me who've been around a long time who are still there. That's good, right? Because they bring something to the table that's of value to all of us. But there's also there's a lot of new folks coming into the industry as well.
And do you see that primarily from an operational point of view, or from nuclear generation designers and contractors?
I think it's both.
Good.
It's both.
And I'm in that group you talked about, that
Yes.
70s to 80s. Lord, don't rely on me. When that's good to hear, and I was thinking that in general from I guess a big picture point of view relative to fuel. Now I know we're only talking nuclear with you guys, but since it clearly seems to be a good, stable base load generation source, I want to have comfort that Duke and whomever else is considering such things as domestic supplies or secure supplies of raw materials, what we need to maintain these type facilities from a national security point of view, if nothing else. Is that what I'm hearing from you gentlemen?
Commissioner Caston, we do pay attention to where the material is coming from. As we sit today, the U.S. does not have enough uranium production, nor conversion, nor enrichment capacity to fuel its own needs. So we do look towards allies for that help. If the planned new builds do go forward, we are going to need more capacity, and we will work with allies and the government, federal government, to try and get that up.
Is this due more to a supply side issue or from a regulatory point of issue?
I'm not certain at this point. If it's the companies themselves, or if it's a regulatory burden that's preventing it as of now.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Good afternoon. It's good to see you all here. I'd like for one or both of you to talk some about the relationship of the nuclear power that you all support and the coal that the source power that the company has. And is there a relationship in how the company's looking at coal-fired plants?
And when you say relationship, do you mean relative to resources or just as a generation
As
source?
a generation source.
So, I mean, generally, the way to think about it is the nuclear plants run 100% power all the time. And then the other sources of generation, we would tend to cycle as needed based on load. So, I mean, the two have to work together to ultimately be able to service our load. But that's probably the simplest way to think about it. I mean, our goal with our plants is start them up coming out of a refueling outage, and if we get everything right, we'll run them at 100% power, with the exception of a few tests we have to do during the cycle until the next refueling outage. Whereas the fossil plants, they have some baseload units that tend to run at 100% power, but they also have units that cycle based on load. And I would tell you in some ways that's much more challenging. You kind of optimize. We were actually talking about it at lunch. You optimize the plant to run in a place, and in our case,
say that word again. You optimize the plant to run at
a particular place,
okay.
And in our case, that's 100% power. So we're able to tune everything so that's its spot it wants to be. That's its happy place where the plant runs the best. And so the nuclear runs at 100% power. The fossil plants tend to cycle with load.
And is that what happened during Winter Storm Elliott?
I'll let you talk to Mr. Flanagan relative to the fossil, because I don't know all the details. Relative to nuclear during Winter Storm Elliott, we had the DEC units, those 7 units, were all at 100% power and remained at 100% power. We had smaller issues, which shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, that we had to address, but nothing that threatened the generation of the units.
And do you see a relationship between your nuclear power and how the company is looking at coal going forward?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question. Beyond just the relationships, the combination of the two, we got to be able to reliably serve the load. That would be my perspective.
I'm just trying not to lead you. So, but in the reality is it's kind of a vague question. So, thank you. No further questions. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cameron, you mentioned in your summary about you expect the price of uranium to go up in the future. And of course, with the political atmosphere, it could, no telling, go up how much or even be shut off. What are you able to, since it's cheaper now, what's the storage capability as far as if you bought more than you needed, or what could you do about that? Is that a possibility to avoid higher prices, to store it in some way? Do you have that ability?
We do have that ability in some of our locations, and we are monitoring the markets to see if that makes prudent sense to purchase it and hold it for a future need. We do have to offset that against the holding costs for the customers as well.
And you can store it for a long time, can't you?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. I just don't understand why you wouldn't take advantage of the prices now.
We will certainly keep that in consideration.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, any further questions for this panel?
Chair.
Commissioner Urban.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I wanted to ask you about the nuclear outage during the Winter Storm Elliott event in South Carolina. It's my understanding that we lost about 759 megawatts of nuclear due to a planned outage that extended into December of last year. Could you explain that for us, please?
Yes, sir. And I guess I got one question as a point of just understanding. That outage was at Robinson Nuclear Station, which is a DEP facility. I would be glad to explain it. I mean, I understand it, but it's up to you all as to.
Well, yeah, since you're the nuclear expert for the company, I would like to hear your response, please.
So Robinson had a nuclear a refueling outage scheduled that went into December, and one of the work activities we had to do during that outage was a reactor vessel internals inspection. You have to do it every 10 years. So you basically go in. There's part of the internals you can remove, part of them you can't, but you do an inspection underwater of the reactor vessel and the core barrel. And over the course of that inspection, we found some indications in the core barrel. There were actually 5 at Robinson that we did not anticipate. We had never seen that, and the industry had never seen that. And so we had to disposition those 5 indications. And there was one in particular that we needed to mitigate. And when I say mitigate, basically you gotta, we put holes at the crack tips to relieve the stress so that it wouldn't grow anymore. And we had to design the equipment to be able to locate and mark the crack tips. And then we also had to work with a vendor to design and deploy the equipment to make the holes at the crack tips to relieve the stress. So the time that pushed it further into December was the fact that we found those indications that we had not seen and the industry had not seen. And then we had to work with vendors to develop tooling in the short term to allow us to mitigate to the degree we had to be able to restart the unit.
Well, thank you for that explanation. My understanding is historically, the company has always tried to schedule the nuclear outages either in the spring or the fall when peak demands are low. And had you started earlier, it's certainly possible that you could have avoided this extended outage, is it not?
I don't think we would have avoided it. It would have just, if we backed it up a week, it would have, we'd have finished a week earlier. It was gonna be extended. It's just a product of when we started it, when we got to the inspections, and then the time it took beyond that to deal with what we found that we didn't expect.
When was that schedule outage? When did it begin in 2022?
I do not recall off the top of my head. It would have been sometime around mid-November. Would be my guess, but I would have to go look, Commissioner.
Well, based on historical planning and best practices, November is late in the calendar year to start a planned outage, is it not?
It is, but it's generally a product of how many outages we have in a particular year or in a particular period. We will have anywhere from 5 to 8. So, if you take 4 outages in a spring or a fall without considerable overlap between those outages, it's tough to fit it all in a 3-month period. Now, that is our goal, is to stay out of. Really, in the summer we'd say June, and in the winter we would say December. But the number of outages you have in a period creates challenges relative relative to just fitting it all in the days that you've got.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I had, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, anything further for this panel? Any redirect, Ms. Brown?
No, nothing from us, Chair Belzer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony this afternoon. You may stand down. Thank you. Mr. Straywick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The company would next call Ms. Kiva Hibbert and Ms. Kendall McGinley to the stand. Madam Chair, just for housekeeping, initially Ms. Sigourney Clark was going to be on this panel, but we are saving her till tomorrow.
Correct.
In keeping with the uncontested issues being presented today.
Thank you.
Could you raise your right hands, please? In the testimony you're about to give, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you. Ms. Hibbert, would you please state your full name for the record?
Kiva Hibbert.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm a lead rates and regulatory analyst at Duke Energy Business Services, LLC.
Did you prepare a cause to be prepared 8 pages of pre-filed direct testimony that was filed with the commission in this proceeding?
I did.
If I asked you the same questions that were in your pre-filed direct testimony today from the stand, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I would ask that Ms. Hibbert's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Hibbert's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hibbert, did you also prepare a cause to be prepared 1 exhibit that was submitted with your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes.
Do you have any changes to that exhibit at this time?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, I would ask that Ms. Hibbert's pre-filed direct exhibit be entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
Ms. Hibbert's Exhibit 1, which was attached to her pre-filed testimony, will be marked for identification as hearing Exhibit number 5 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hibbert, would you please provide a summary of your direct testimony at this time?
The purpose of my testimony is to discuss 1, the 11 components of the value of distributed energy resources, or DER, avoided cost contained in the NEM methodology. 2, changes to the value of DER methodology that have been made since the 2022 field proceeding. And 3, the update to the NEM administrative charge. Per Commission Orders 2015-194 and 2021-569, the company updated the 2023 value of NEM DER by applying the avoided cost methodology and rates approved by the Commission in Order 2022-330, as well as updating input assumptions. As a result, the company updated the 2023 value of NEM DER to $0.04347 per kilowatt hour for schedules RS, RE, ES, RB, and RT. 0.04313 per kilowatt hour for schedule SGS, and $0.04324 per kilowatt hour for all other schedules. The company assigned a 0 value to its avoided cost CO2 emissions cost, fuel hedge, utility integration and interconnection cost, utility administration, and environmental costs. For the first time, the company has developed a non-zero value for avoided T&D capacity costs for purposes of this year's annual fuel cost recovery proceeding. These capacity values were calculated by analyzing the impacts of rooftop solar and peak demand, and then applying the company's energy efficiency demand-side management value for avoided T&D capacity to the results. While the company has recognized impacts of solar at the system level prior to this filing, the company did not have the adequate tools to calculate how NEM would impact each circuit's peak capacity need until recently. New data tools have enabled the company to evaluate the impact of NEM-DERs on the T&D systems for purposes of calculating values for this proceeding. Finally, the NEM administrative charge was reduced from $4.86 per customer per month to $2.43 per customer per month. The reduction in cost reflects savings derived from transitioning from manual billing to automated billing of customers being served on Rider R&M. This concludes the summary of my direct testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Hibbert. Ms. McGinley, would you please state your full name for the record? There you go.
Kendall McGinley.
Thank you. By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am a manager of products and services for Duke Energy Carolinas, LLC.
Ms. McGinley, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 6 pages of direct testimony that were pre-filed with the Commission in this proceeding?
I did.
If I asked you the same questions that were asked in your pre-filed direct testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would ask that Ms. McGinley's pre-filed direct testimony be moved into the record in this case.
Ms. McGinley's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if testified to from the stand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. McGinley, would you please provide a summary of your testimony at this time?
I will. The purpose of my testimony is to provide a brief update on the status of the customer programs that the company implemented to meet the goals of Act 236. With respect to the company's solar rebate program, the company has fully dispersed its allotted 40,000 kilowatts in solar rebates to South Carolina recipients with its final payment in April of 2020. The rebates will continue to be amortized and carrying costs determined over the duration of the 15-year amortization period through March of 2035. Incremental costs associated with this program include the amortization of rebates paid, carrying costs on deferred amounts, and general and administrative expenses required to manage the program. In 2019, the company launched its shared solar program as a means for retail customers to subscribe to and share in the economic benefits of renewable energy facilities. Customers can apply online and pay a monthly shared solar subscription fee in addition to their regular energy bill. Customers receive a monthly energy credit from the company based on the solar energy produced by their share of the solar facility that they help support with their monthly shared solar subscription fee. The company also offers a low moderate income, or LMI, customer program for 200 qualified customers where the company waives the application fee and the initial subscription charge. Currently, the program is fully subscribed and the company maintains a waiting list for LMI customers in the event that capacity becomes available under the LMI designated capacity. The company's outreach has proved to be beneficial. The program is set to expire in February of 2029. The incremental costs associated with the filing include the amount of subsidy utilized to lower subscription fees for program participants, the cost of purchased power in excess of avoided cost on the subscribed portion of the PPA, and the general and administrative costs of managing the program. The avoided costs associated with the shared solar program includes the avoided costs of the purchased power on the subscribed portion of the PPA. Since the Commission approved the company's Distributed Energy Resource Program application in 2015, the company has taken steps to ensure customers have access to information about the company's programs and are able to communicate with the company representatives about the programs. The company's outreach efforts and regular communications work to keep stakeholders and retail customers informed about the status of the program offerings and other developments related to the company's Distributed Energy Resource Program. This concludes the summary of my testimony.
Thank you, Ms. McGinley. Madam Chair, Ms. Hibbert and Ms. McGinley are available for questions from Council and the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Trawick. Mr. Elliott.
No questions, thank you, ma'am.
Commissioners, questions for this panel? Commissioner Carol Lee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Ms. Hibbert and Ms. McGinley, good to see you today. Ms. Hibbert, you were talking about the kind of new ability to understand T&D capacity. Could you, this is just a curiosity question, could you explain a little bit more about what tools there were that allowed you to be able to detail what that cost was?
Yes, Commissioner Williams. So the company has been using the ISOP data system, which has allowed the company to develop new analytical tools. These analytical tools have modernized the integrated resource planning process. And because of the availability of these tools, it has also given the company the capability to determine an avoided T&D capacity cost, which it wasn't able to do in the past.
So what information is now available that you weren't able to know before?
So I don't have the technical expertise to explain the details behind how those analytical tools work, because in the process of calculating the value of an MDER, we use this avoided cost as an input, and this input is determined for us. I do know it is able to derive some historical data on rooftop solar. That's the extent of my knowledge really on how it works. But this is actually how they come up with an avoided T&D cost, and they weren't able to do that before because this capability was not available.
Thank you. I appreciate your best efforts at that answer, and I could easily be in your shoes and not know.
Thank you.
Ms. McGinley, I just want to know a little bit about the success of the community solar program and whether there's any potential for expanding it, and are there costs that make it inefficient, or what the thinking is there?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I would say that it is successful, and we can determine that because we've got the program fully subscribed, both for the low moderate income class and what we call the market rate, or other half of the program, with a pretty sizable wait lists for both. So there's definitely interest in the program. So it is successful, and we've got similar models in other jurisdictions, that have been successful. As far as expanding the program, I don't know if I can really say if that's in the plans or not. I know that we've got 3 megawatts, set aside for this program right now, but, I would be open to it, but I would say it's not my decision on whether we expand or not.
And would you tell me a little bit more about the LMI portion?
Sure.
So is it the same program that you have, that's accessible to the community through the community solar program, just with specific requirements and abilities?
Yes, yeah, good question. So the requirement to participate as an LMI customer is that you've got to be at 200% or less of the federal poverty level. And we have, for the first few hundred customers, waived the around $80 application and enrollment fee. Although that has recently changed, as we read the language closer in the tariff, we no longer are going to be waiving that fee. So we'll kind of have to see how the interest changes for that group, because the goal is to provide savings for that customer class, and if we have to charge that initial fee, we'll see how our wait list is maintained. But and then they are capped at 2 kilowatt subscriptions, which is a little bit different from the rest of our program. But ultimately, it's the same program, just a few changes. So.
Do you have any global kind of data for the program regarding the impact to those customers? Either percentage saved or...
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe we do on our website. We have, an example of what kind of savings customers could see month to month. So that's a chart available on our website. So I actually have an example of that. But for a year beginning December 2019 through January of 2020, $108 of savings was kind of seen as the average for that LMI customer. I don't have global totals for what that entire group has seen in savings.
That's exactly what I meant for
Okay.
the LMI customers. So thank you very much. I appreciate your being here and your answers. Thank you. No further questions.
Commissioners, questions? Hearing no further questions, Mr. Trawick, any redirect?
None from the company, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ladies, thank you for your testimony this morning. We appreciate you being here. You may stand down.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I would ask that Ms. McGinley, Ms. Hibbert, Mr. Capps, and Mr. Cameron be excused.
You know my rule.
I sure do. From the uncontested portion of the company's case.
You know my rule, Mr. Trawick. If you excuse them, that's at your peril, and that's fine. I don't know that they'll be needed, but that's up to y'all.
Thank you. Understood.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, sorry.
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Also, that is the extent of our witnesses today that aren't on contested issues. We've spoken with ORS. I believe they have a panel ready if the commission's willing to take them out of order.
If you'd like to take one out of order, we do have one panel available.
I think that would help us tomorrow, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sir. If you're willing to go out of order, is there any objection to taking witnesses? Ladies, y'all may stand down. Any objection to taking witnesses out of order? Thank you. Mr. Austin?
Yes, ma'am. We'll call our panel of Jeffrey Gordon and Anthony Brazino to the stand.
I'm sure they'd like to get through their portion today.
Y'all's lucky afternoon. We've got a celebrity guest over here to be a witness for the first time, Mr. Jeff Gordon. So, little racing joke.
Not so fast.
Where the witness?
If you could raise your right hand for me, please. In the testimony you're about to give, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Mr. Gordon, we'll start with you first. Good afternoon. Mr. Gordon, could you please state your name for the record?
Jeffrey Gordon.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as a regulatory analyst.
Mr. Gordon, in connection with this proceeding, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 8 pages of direct testimony filed with the Commission on August 31st, 2023?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections, additions, or deletions to your direct testimony?
No.
If you were asked, if I were to ask you the same questions set forth in your direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I would ask that Mr. Gordon's direct testimony be entered into the record of this proceeding as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Gordon's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Thank you. And Mr. Gordon, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared one exhibit marked JAG1 that accompanied your pre-filed testimony?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your exhibit?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, I would ask that Mr. Gordon's exhibit JAG1 filed with direct testimony be marked and entered as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Gordon's pre-filed exhibit marked JAG1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 6 and received into the evidence of this case.
Mr. Gordon, have you prepared a summary of your testimony for the Commission today?
Yes.
Would you please provide that summary at this time?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. My name is Jeffrey Gordon. As detailed in my direct testimony, the ORS reviewed company data detailing actual, estimated, and forecasted avoided and incremental costs for the period of June 1st, 2022 through October 31st, 2024 in order to ascertain the accuracy of and establish recommendations resulting from the examination of Duke Energy Carolinas LLC's Distributed Energy Resource or DERP expenses for the actual period of June 2022 through June 2023, the estimated period of July 2023 through October 2023, the forecasted period of November 2023 through October 2024 in order to promote the public interest. In the course of its investigation, the ORS determined that the company's calculations comply with Act 236 and with the Commission's orders in previous DERP-related proceedings and support the following proposed DERP charges: a residential charge of $12 per year, a commercial charge of $24.99 per year, and an industrial charge of $1,160.87 per year.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Have you had an opportunity to review the stipulation which some of the parties have entered into in this proceeding?
Yes.
Do you support the stipulation as a just and reasonable resolution of the proceeding?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'm now going to turn to Mr. Brazino. Could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Anthony D. Brazino.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the state of South Carolina as an audit manager in the audit department for the Office of the Regulatory Staff.
Did you prepare or cause to be prepared pre-filed direct testimony consisting of 17 pages filed with the Commission in this proceeding on August 31st, 2023?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony?
No, I do not.
If I ask you the same questions today as posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, I would ask that Mr. Brazino's direct testimony be entered into the record of this proceeding as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Brazino's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Brazino, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 8 exhibits marked as ADB1 through ADB8 that accompanied your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to any of your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, I would ask that Mr. Brazino's exhibits ADB1 through ADB8 filed with his direct testimony be marked and entered into as the next hearing exhibit as a composite exhibit.
The exhibits which were pre-filed with Mr. Brazino's direct testimony marked ADB1 through ADB8 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 7 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. Mr. Brazino, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 2 pages of pre-filed surrebuttal testimony filed with the Commission in this proceeding on September 20th, 2023?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your pre-filed surrebuttal testimony?
No, I do not.
If I ask you the same questions today as posed in your pre-filed surrebuttal testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, I would ask that Mr. Brazino's pre-filed surrebuttal testimony be entered into the record of this proceeding as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Brazino's pre-filed surrebuttal testimony will be received into the record as if given from the stand.
Thank you. Mr. Brazino, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 1 exhibit marked as surrebuttal exhibit ADB1 that accompanied your pre-filed surrebuttal testimony?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your surrebuttal exhibit?
No, I do not.
At this time, Chair, I would request that this exhibit be entered as the next hearing exhibit.
The exhibit...
Mr. Brazino's surrebuttal exhibit ADB1 be entered as the next hearing exhibit.
The exhibit attached and pre-filed with Mr. Brazino's surrebuttal testimony with that is identified as surrebuttal exhibit ADB1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit 8 and received into the record of this case.
Thank you. Mr. Brazino, did you prepare a summary of your direct and surrebuttal testimony?
Yes, I did.
Could you please read your summary for the Commission now?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to explain the scope of ORS's examination of Duke Energy Carolina's books and records as they pertain to the company's operation of the fuel adjustment clause in the current filing and present the results of our examination. This examination included the review of base fuel, environmental, capacity, DERP incremental, and DERP avoided costs. ORS examined and verified the monthly over and under recovery balances as recorded by the company for the actual period that ended May 2023. Based upon ORS's review, ORS witness Thompson recommends a disallowance to base fuel as shown as Adjustment B in the calculation of the cumulative balance of base fuel as of May 2023. My direct testimony also explains the 8 exhibits that I sponsored for this hearing. The purpose of my surrebuttal testimony and my surrebuttal exhibit is to explain and show the impact that ORS witness Thompson and ORS witness Bickley's revised Adjustment B has on the calculation of the cumulative balance of base fuel as of May 2023. Subsequent to the filing of my pre-filed testimony, a stipulation was entered into between ORS and DEC in this proceeding. The stipulation is the result of earnest, good faith, and complex negotiation between stakeholders with diverse interests. In the spirit of collaboration, each of the parties made compromises from their original positions to achieve a balanced resolution of the issues in this proceeding. Further, ORS believes that the stipulation is in the public interest of South Carolina and respectfully requests that the Commission approve the stipulation as presented. This concludes the summary of my direct and rebuttal testimonies.
Thank you. Madam Chair, this panel is available now for questions from the other parties and the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Mr. Elliott.
No questions, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, questions for this panel? Commissioner Justin Williams.
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions. I just would like to compliment Mr. Pizzino on his tie. I appreciate the Stormtrooper tie as a Star Wars fan.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
No offense to you, Mr. Gordon.
It's all right. I like his tie too.
Commissioner Carol Lee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Gentlemen, Mr. Brazino particularly identified public interest, but would you, either of you, kind of give us more detail in terms of why you find the stipulation in the public interest?
The stipulation addresses the issues at case in this particular docket. It resolves all of those issues and potentially reduces the amount of time that was spent litigating this case and any further review that would be required by the Supreme Court should one of the parties be unhappy with the outcomes from this case.
What about the impact to ratepayers?
This does provide a reduction to what the company originally requested in its application.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I've met Richard Petty, too. I'm trying to think how to ask this because I'm not asking a question about the stipulation, but in your testimony, the Sarah Buttle, I think. Yes. Sarah Buttle on page 2 where you talked about the cumulative under-recovered balance, $300,545,928. Did you have confidence in that number?
Yes, sir. That number was based upon ORS's review, then taking into account ORS's adjustment B as proposed by ORS witnesses Thompson and Bigley.
Okay. Well, I don't know how to ask it now since it's in the stipulation, so I guess I'll just not ask it. I'll just wait on the next go round. See if there's anything else. Probably is, but I can't think of it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Commissioners. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Mr. Bickley, I just, would you turn to your direct exhibit ADB 3 for me?
One correction to...
I'm sorry, never mind.
Brazino instead of Bickley.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brazino. I need you to turn to ADB 3. Thank you very much.
3, you said, ma'am?
3.
Okay, I'm okay with that exhibit.
The second line is avoided fuel benefit of SC DN.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that line to me?
So for that particular line, it's based upon the net energy metering reports that calculate a benefit or increase in costs depending on the inputs that are analyzed for that value of solar table, which feeds into the calculation of that number. So in this particular instance, it increases cost to customers based upon the inputs that were put into that table.
And what are the inputs?
There is a value of solar table that I do not do any underlying review associated with. That is based upon the ORS witness, Mr. Gordon's department's review.
Okay. That doesn't help me, and it's not your fault. It's my lack of understanding. So thank you very much. I appreciate you trying to help me. Sometimes I'm beyond help. Commissioners, Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Well, I'll jump in. You just said that Mr. Gordon's department is responsible for that component. So can you add any more to this query?
Could you rephrase the question? What specifically would you like to know?
I'm just trying to understand the number and where it's coming from and what it's showing.
So net energy metering is based on payments to customer generators. That's rooftop solar. So that information is going to be pulled in to create that component.
And does that appear somewhere in you've got one exhibit that there's a calculation of the DERP charge, but are those numbers that are coming directly from Duke?
Those are, yes.
Okay. Are they verified somehow?
Yes, we go through and we verify that their calculations line up. And we check out all of the exhibits that we've received, mostly from Ms. Sigourney Clark, I believe. And we try to confirm those numbers. And the numbers that were provided to me remain the same, regardless of any stipulations or addenda that were made.
That's fine. You just told me who to ask with Duke, so she's on deck for tomorrow, and she'll understand what I'm asking for. So thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Caston.
Since they've asked the questions, I want to make sure I understand it too. When I look at the exhibit that they referenced, and I don't want to screw up the number of that, where you have listed avoided fuel benefits of South Carolina NEM. Is there any particular reason why you have it broken out this way as far as the...
It makes it easier to verify that the numbers are correct. Instead of having it as one lump sum, we can break it out into avoided and incremental.
So the number in parentheses, the equivalent, well, I don't know if I'd say negative, but tell me what that means. It's, well, I don't know what line it is, but it's the one that says, let me hold it a little further back.
All right.
It says avoided fuel benefits of SC NEM, South Carolina Net Energy Metering. And it's got, in parentheses, 276.9, I think 14.
I think I was looking at the first one, which is
looking
total.
At the top number
and,
at the top. Well, I said it was an increase to cost up there, but further down it is a reduction in cost. Yes,
because that's just where Commissioner Caston was referencing is just South Carolina portion. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I don't have Mr. Brazino's Exhibit 3 with me.
Can you repeat your question, sir? I apologize.
Yes, the number on, for say, June 2022 is what I'm looking at right now.
Yes, sir.
Avoided fuel benefits of South Carolina NEM, and in parentheses it has 276.914.
Yes, sir.
And does that mean there's a negative avoided cost benefit? I mean,
no, sir. With the negative there, it's reducing the amount of costs that the company needs recovery of.
Okay, as I would expect, if it's in parentheses, it's a negative number in essence, correct?
Yes, as you can see, if you take the South Carolina base fuel costs of the $73,561,367 and take into a consideration the negative $276,914, you arrive at the $73,284,453 right below it.
I actually did that, and I thought that's what it was, and I said, well, maybe I'm missing something, but I was not, and thank you very much. You spoke just like an accountant. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Carolyn Williams?
I'm going to ask it a different way. Looking at Mr. Brazino's chart, Exhibit 3, why is the same line item listed twice? The avoided fuel benefit of South Carolina NIM is the second line item on that chart. And then farther down, the only difference that I see is that it's identified as S period, C period, NEM. Are those two line items?
They are related, but they are not exactly the same. The first line item is dealing with the total system costs, and then whenever it gets down to the South Carolina share, there's an additional removal associated with the Greenwood customer class schedules, if my recollection is correct, which accounts for there being $1 difference between the 277,635 and the 276,914.
So does, in the second line, does SC stand for something different than
No,
SC?
ma'am.
Okay. Perhaps in the future for everybody involved, it could be helpful to identify what each of these are and how they're different in just in nomenclature.
Duly noted, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions. At least you wouldn't have us asking questions about something that detailed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, any further questions for this panel? Mr. Austin, any redirect?
No, ma'am.
Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony this afternoon. You may stand down.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I apologize for the wrong name.
That's all right.
Madam Chair, we do ask that they be excused at our peril.
At your peril. Well, we've made some good progress this afternoon. Is there anything else that we want to get through this afternoon? Parties? Okay. I think that'll leave us, what, 6 witnesses for tomorrow? Is that correct? Got 4 from you and 2 from you? Okay.
Chair Belzer.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Kate Mixon. I just have a brief scheduling question, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a conflict tomorrow, midday. And so respectfully, I was going to ask if I might be excused for tomorrow's hearing. Ms. Clancy will be available to represent CCCL.
Yes, ma'am. You may be excused. Understand conflicts.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Is there anything further before we recess for the evening from the parties? Thank y'all for working with us today. I know that put you under the gun. It's always tough to get documents prepared, but appreciate y'all working through that and sending it to us. So with that, we are going to start at 9:30 in the morning because we do have a number of witnesses to get through. So we are in recess until 9:30 tomorrow morning.
Chair Belzer.
Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you. Is there an update on stipulated testimony?
Parties, are y'all going to present stipulated testimony in the morning?
Chair, Madam Chair, the initial thought of the parties was that we would not be submitting stipulation testimony, but of course we are at the whim of the desire.
At the whim.
No. Wrong word. Long day.
Thank you, Mr. Torrey. That's fine. We were wondering.
Exactly.
That's
I
all it is.
misunderstood earlier and thought it was coming.
So that's fine. We understand. As long as your witnesses are available to answer questions, that's the main thing. So thank you very much. And with that, we are in recess until 9:30 tomorrow morning. Everyone have a good evening and safe travels.